During weak La Nina years, the northern United States experiences more snowstorms than usual, typically speaking, as if we were to take a look at the average snowfall patterns for weak La Nina years, we clearly see that the northern United States, especially right around the northern Midwest and the Pacific Northwest, experiences higher than normal snowfall, where the range compared to average when it comes to the anomaly during weak La Nina years is anywhere between 4 to 12 inches for most areas of the northern United States, which could mean the difference between experiencing maybe around 2 to 3 more snowstorms during weak La Nina years. So it's definitely very important to take a look at the snowfall pattern for weak La Nina years to really determine how many snowstorms you're going to experience in each area. So based on this fact alone, it's most likely that you're going to experience more snowstorms than usual this winter in the northern Midwest, as well as Pacific Northwest, and even portions of the Northeast, where right around New England we do see more snowstorms happening right around Maine, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and this extends into upstate New York as well. And the areas that are expected to receive less snowstorms than usual range right around the southwestern portion of the United States, right around the southern portion of the Rocky Mountain ranges, which includes states like New Mexico, Arizona, and even portions of eastern Colorado. You guys simply experience less snowstorms than usual during weak La Nina years, where the difference when compared to the average snowfall is anywhere between 2 to 4 inches below normal in a lot of these areas right over Colorado and even portions of western Kansas and Nebraska. So based on this, we could get a good idea of how many snowstorms you're going to experience when also taking a look at the average amount of snowstorms you experience in any given year in each area, and then just pretty much consider the fact that we're going to be in a weak La Nina. We get a good idea of how the sort of range of when it comes to the amount of snowstorms you should experience in each area of the United States. But of course, we need to take a look at other factors before we can jump to that conclusion, because each winter is very different. Despite the fact that we're going to be in a weak La Nina, there's other factors that play a role in determining how many snowstorms you're going to see this winter. A pattern that plays a major role in this is a Pacific North American pattern, where, as you can see, pretty much extending from the beginning of September all the way to the November timeframe, the forecast is that we're going to be in a positive Pacific North American pattern, which could play a significant role in terms of the amount of snowstorms you experience in each area. And what does a positive Pacific North American pattern mean exactly, which you might probably be wondering right now? Well, a Pacific North American pattern, at least when it's a positive phase, that means the pressures are lower right around the eastern half of the United States, as we see more jet stream dips that allow for the pressures to be lower. So it makes the eastern half of the United States more likely to experience snowstorms, while the western half is more likely to experience areas of higher pressure, which means you would experience more sunny than normal conditions, as well as drier than normal conditions as well, which of course means less snowstorms in a positive Pacific North American pattern, or PNA pattern for short. And then for a negative pattern, it's likely you could probably imagine it's the opposite that happens, where the eastern United States experiences warmer and drier conditions during the winter time, while the western United States experiences more moist and snowy and colder than normal conditions for the most part during a negative PNA pattern. So this plays a big role in terms of what we're going to see this winter. It's most likely that we're going to stay maybe around the positive phase, but at least by the time we approach an early winter time frame, we're going to see if that continues into February as well as January. But I'll say that the eastern United States could see more snowfall than usual just based on this pattern alone, despite the fact that the snowfall anomaly, especially for the northeastern United States, isn't very strong, at least compared to the northern Midwest and the Pacific Northwest. So despite the fact that that weak La Nina typically don't bring, let's say, a ton of more snowfall than usual, For the Northeast, I think the positive PNA pattern could sort of offset that and bring more snowfall than you'd typically expect for the Northeast compared to what you see in prior weak La Niñas. So this map shows exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to the PNA pattern. During the positive phase, it's colder in the eastern United States, warmer in the western United States, while during a negative phase, it's colder along the western half of the United States, while it's warmer in the eastern half, which means less snowfall, of course. So here's a quick look at the temperature anomalies for weak La Nina years compared to the long-term average of 1991 and 2020, and it's much colder than usual right over the northern Midwest, which makes me more inclined to believe you're going to see more snowstorms this winter, especially in this area. And we even see the temperatures cooler than normal right around the southwestern portion of the United States, but the anomaly isn't very strong to where I'd confidently say you're going to experience more snowstorms in that area. I think that it should, you're more likely to experience much more snowstorms in the northern Midwest and the Pacific Northwest, like I said, thanks to these temperature anomalies. While for the southwestern United States, while it is slightly cooler than normal during weak La Niñas, it's simply also drier than normal, which makes me less inclined to believe you're going to experience more snowstorms than usual. In fact, you're more likely to see less snowstorms than usual, especially due to the fact that a positive PNA pattern could take shape around the western United States, which could limit the amount of snowstorms, especially for the southwestern United States, where the jet stream won't move far south enough to really bring that potential of snowstorms for portions such as Arizona, New Mexico, and even southern Colorado. I expect those areas to see less snowstorms than usual. And then for the eastern United States, we see that temperatures mainly hover around average, but I think that could be offset by the fact that we're going to be in a positive PNA pattern. So in the Northeast, where you typically experience around average temperatures, I think the PNA pattern could shift the tide to where the temperatures could be slightly below average and you do experience maybe slightly more snowstorms than what you typically experience. And by the way, what I'm defining as a snowstorm is any snow event that's over 1 inch. And I know many of you guys probably don't consider a snowstorm if it only produces 1 inch of snowfall, but it's the only sort of data we really have available when it comes to determining the frequency of snow events in the United States. Really, the only data point we have is the amount of 1 inch snow events that happen in the United States. So unfortunately, we can't really include the possibility of, let's say, experiencing a snowstorm which brings over 3 inches of snowfall, or any sort of storm system that you might consider a snowstorm, because unfortunately the data just isn't there. So the best we could do is use 1 inch snowfall events, and even when it comes to 1 inch snowfall events, you can't underestimate those either, because I've seen plenty of 1 inch snowstorms bring quite a bit of chaos, especially on the roads when they do move through, especially when the 1 inch snowfall falls at a very fast clip. So it's definitely still good to be aware of that possibility of 1 inch snowstorm events, especially in the southern United States where you typically aren't used to snowstorm events like this. So that's the definition I'll be going by when it comes to what a snowstorm is in this video, just so you know. But like I said, the northern Midwest as well as the Pacific Northwest most likely to experience more snowstorms than usual, while the southeast and pretty much the entirety of the southern United States expected to receive less snowstorms. And if you're wondering why the southern United States is expected to receive less snowstorms than usual, despite the fact that temperatures will most likely hover around average or slightly below average for a weak La Nina, it's due to the precipitation anomalies, where we clearly see that the precipitation anomalies for much of the southern United States, especially the southeast and into Florida, which Florida likely won't experience a snowstorm either way, but the mid-Atlantic, Texas, and even California and portions of Arizona, it's slightly drier than normal during weak La Nina years, which makes me less inclined to believe that there's going to be enough moisture for a snowstorm to impact portions of the southeast. So I do expect it to be less likely you're going to experience let's say even one snowstorm for portions of the southeast, thanks to the fact that it's expected to be drier than normal, despite the temperatures expected to hover around average. So definitely keep that in mind. And in terms of the areas where you're likely to experience more precipitation than normal, this includes portions of the Rocky Mountains as well as the Great Lakes region. This is where you should expect a little bit more precipitation and as a result snowstorms, especially since they're going to compound the cooler than normal conditions that's simply associated with weak La Nina. So you definitely want to keep that in mind throughout the northern United States. Now another good thing to take a look at is drought monitor, and as you can see for the southern Midwest, it is much drier than normal, and we even see drier than normal conditions for the Pacific Northwest and extending into the western Midwest as well. So during weak La Ninas, like I just showed you, it's simply around average when it comes to precipitation, and that could be key in determining how many snowstorms you experience. If this drought continues on into the winter time frame, then of course the possibility of snowstorms becomes a lot less favorable thanks to the drier than normal conditions. And typically during a drought, there's already a very strong ridge that's parked right over the Pacific Northwest, so that could help prevent the snowstorms being as frequent in some of these areas. However, I do eventually expect by the time we approach the winter time frame that the weak La Nina will take over and eventually bring more moisture to the Pacific Northwest, because we have to also keep in mind that during the summer time frame, it's already very difficult to get rainfall, and we won't really get precipitation in the Pacific Northwest until we approach the winter time frame, where precipitation is most typical along the western half of the United States. So I do eventually expect the weak La Nina to offset this drought, to remove this drought once we really get more storm systems and potentially atmospheric rivers moving into the western United States. And then for the southern Midwest, since this drought is going to compound a weak La Nina, you're likely going to still experience much drier than normal conditions. So I do expect less snowstorms to happen as a result of this drought in the southern United States. Places such as Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, New Mexico, and even extending into Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana, I expect the possibility of snowstorms to be much less this winter thanks to this drought and the weak La Nina we're going to experience. And another thing I also want to point out is that much of the Great Lakes as well as the Northeast are aren't really at a drought at all. And what makes me believe, what is a little bit something that I want to indicate with this is that since there isn't really a drought in these areas, there could be that possibility that the ridging is so strong right over the drought-stricken areas that it might push all the lower pressure areas straight towards the Northeast and the Midwest, which could increase the amount of snowstorms you experience this winter, which is the reason why in Northeast I'm expecting it to be above average when it comes to the amount of snowstorms, thanks to the fact that typically during a scenario like this where it's much drier in the western United States, that forces a lot of the storm systems to be more inclined to move into the Northeast. So that increases the amount of storm systems, and as a result, the amount of snowstorms you experience during the winter time frame. And it's already going to compound a weak La Nina we're going to experience, which typically already does bring slightly more snowfall in the Northeast. So I do expect it there to be a little bit more snowstorms for the Northeast as well as the Great Lakes, thanks to this potential drought as well. So here's my number of snowstorms forecast for the entirety of the United States. So like I just said earlier in the video, what counts as a snowstorm is any snowfall event that brings over 1 inch of snow or more. I wish I could use snowstorms that bring a little bit more. I wish I could define a snowstorm as a snow event that brings a little bit more snowfall, but this is the only data we really have available when it comes to the frequency of snowfall events. So in the areas of the Rocky Mountain ranges, such as Wyoming, the higher elevations of Utah extending into Montana and Idaho, this is where you should expect over 30 snowstorms, and this area is a little bit bigger than usual in these in the Pacific Northwest and the Rocky Mountain ranges, because I do expect the frequency of snowstorms to be higher for the Pacific Northwest and the Rocky Mountain regions as well, for the other regions I stated earlier in this video. And then same goes for the interior Northeast as well as the Northern Great Lakes. The area of 30 or more snowstorms is higher due to the fact that it's going to be colder. It's expected to be colder and more snowy in a lot of these areas. That's simply what's associated with weak La Nina. So in places like upstate New York, New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, and extending into the western portion of Michigan, you should expect over 30 snowstorms this winter. And then just south of that, this is where you should expect 20 to 30 snowstorms, and this area is a little bit further southward, so definitely keep that in mind in the 20 to 30 snowstorms area, and this includes the higher elevations of California as well. And by the way, in the higher elevations of California, this is a little bit less because I do expect it to be a little bit more drier than normal right over California. Typically in the Sierra Mountain ranges of California, you experience more than 30 snowstorms this winter. I'm going a little bit lower to 20 to 30 snowstorms, so keep that in mind. It might not be as favorable when it comes to skiing in the higher elevations of California this winter, so keep that in mind. And then for the areas just south of that, this is an area where you should expect 15 to 20 snowstorms. So Minneapolis is right on the edge of that, which is more snowstorms than what you typically see in Minneapolis, so keep that in mind. This includes Green Bay as well, and Fargo, North Dakota. This is more snowstorms than you experience during the winter time frame, so keep that in mind. And then just south of that, you should expect 10 to 15 snowstorms, and this is an area where we do now include the more populated cities such as Des Moines, Chicago, and Milwaukee. You could expect 10 to 15 snowstorms, which is more snowstorms than what you typically experience. Indianapolis, Cleveland, Detroit, extending just to the New York City metropolitan area as well, and even Boston is involved with is expected to receive 10 to 15 snowstorms this winter, which is more than the usual 5 to 10 in a lot of these cities I just mentioned. So definitely prepare for a more potent winter in those cities. And then just south of that, you should expect 5 to 10 snowstorms. This includes cities such as St. Louis, Louisville, Kentucky, and Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. Should expect 5 to 10 snowstorms this winter, which is more than what you typically expect. And then just south of that, 2 to 5 snowstorms. So this includes southern Missouri, most of Kentucky. This includes Virginia, the Delmarva Peninsula as well, and then portions of northern Oklahoma. So in these areas, this is around the average amount of snowstorms you experience in any given winter. So not much out of the ordinary for those areas. And then just south of that, that's where you should expect 1 to 2 snowstorms. This includes cities such as Virginia Beach, Nashville, Tennessee, as well as Memphis. And this includes Oklahoma City as well, and Amarillo, Texas. This is around average for those areas, so nothing much out of the ordinary. But for the areas further southward, I must point out that the area of 1 to 2 inch snowstorms is a little bit further northward this winter, because I expect it to be a little bit too dry and too warm this winter for cities such as Atlanta and Dallas to experience at least any sort of snow event that will bring over 1 inch of snowfall. Same goes for Charlotte and Columbia, South Carolina. I don't expect a snowstorm this winter. Of course, the forecast is very uncertain, but it does seem like the conditions will be favorable for snow in the southeast. So definitely keep that in mind. But This is my overall winter 2024-2025 snowstorm forecast. If you want even more in detail forecast regarding the amount of snowstorms you should expect this winter, just make sure to comment down your location down below, and I'll make sure to give you guys the most accurate estimation of how many snowstorms your specific area should see this winter. So make sure to comment down below if you're interested. But that's it for now, guys, and I thank you guys for watching.